Is Brexit going wrong? Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, thought she had secured agreement with her cabinet ministers for a free trade area for goods with the European Union. It seemed she had healed the splits between ministers and convinced them to support a business-friendly plan. But shortly afterwards, David Davis, the Brexit secretary responsible for negotiating Britain's exit from the European Union, resigned, closely followed by Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson.
Meanwhile, Brussels has been adding pressure to Theresa May. Senior EU officials have stated the UK cannot change the European Union's founding principles. They dismissed a draft document outlining Britain's future relationship with the European Union. They reject the proposal that the UK could stay indefinitely in a single market for goods after Brexit, with Britain setting its own import tariffs and making new free trade deals. The public has watched on as ministers argue amongst themselves about what should the arrangements be, and if we should plan for a no-deal exit. Talks of a compromise Brexit plan have competed with calls for a hard Brexit, and many who voted to leave have openly expressed anger that the government could be watering down the United Kingdom's departure from the EU. The public's frustration has added to the pressure on the Prime Minister.
Has Theresa May been clear about her Brexit plans? And can anyone deliver a successful departure from the European Union? Simple questions with important answers. The European Union has created a human rights charter covering dignity, protection of personal data and health. And it gives rights to workers, women, children, the elderly and the disabled. What will happen to these rights when the United Kingdom leaves? We put that to the public here in London. Here's what they told us.
The government have made no changes to this, and those who are scaremongering along those lines are misrepresenting the facts.
We need to be very worried about our human rights. We saw before that the Tory party was very keen to repeal the Human Rights Act. It kind of faded away because they were interested in other things, but now it's come back on the table, and without the EU behind us, I think we need to work hard to protect our human rights.
Going to be any change. I mean, we're used to human rights, and it'll continue on, just like it has before, just being managed under different leadership.
There's so much self-interest. You saw how Boris Johnson's behaved. There's too much self-interest. I don't really. Some of them are good. And I think most MPs are generally decent people. But I'm not sure I trust the government itself, no.
Yes, I'm aware it was there, and I think it's something we should be keeping and protecting as part of the UK and its withdrawal of the EU. Of course, I don't support the withdrawal of the EU. I'm a Scottish SNP politician, and we believe that the best place for us is to be within the EU.
Yeah, I think it's important to have those rights set out in law.
Very important for the UK, very important for the future of the country.
I think it's absolutely marvellous, and of course we were very much part of that because we're very much part of the EU. I think 97% of all EU decisions we've either approved or we've abstained from because it wasn't particularly relevant to us. So I think people forget that we're very, very much part of the EU. It's not them and us, it's us.
Well, I think, if you stand together with countries, you're more likely to be able to more strongly enforce that. So I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a shame that we'll be stepping out of it.
The EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, which was taken into the treaties of the European Union in 2009, was a very important step forward because previously the European Union had really been seen as an economic arrangement dealing with rules and regulations and trade deals. But the Charter of Fundamental Rights basically said, no, human beings should be the centre of our attention. And in very clear language it set out both individual rights, such as the right to life, the right to marry, the right to freedom of travel, for example, but also collective rights. So things such as workers' rights to organise in a trade union, to have strikes, and for people politically to organise and to belong to political organisations. So it was a very major step forward, and interestingly took into it a lot of human rights law which had been created here in Britain first of all.
As a result of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018, once the UK leaves the European Union in March 2019, then the British Parliament, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, will be able to decide which European Union laws are to be kept, amended or repealed. And there literally are thousands of EU laws which are going to go before the UK Houses of Parliament. Many of those laws concern workers' rights, for example, and no one at this stage really knows which laws are going to be repealed, amended or kept. It really is at this stage a complete mystery.
Ministers seem to have agreed that Parliament will have the authority to decide whether to abide by European Union rules and regulations in the future. What does the public think about that?
I think we must respect the referendum, and we must also take into account the views of MPs, because we don't wish to change the status quo, we just wish to be independent.
I find it very difficult to take anything that ministers think might happen. It just seems to me totally ridiculous. To think that people here can overturn or change, it's like, yeah, if there are rules, we're part of those rules, that's fine. We're part of those rules, we help make those rules.
We're hopefully not a dictatorship here, and we elect our MPs to represent us and hopefully our best interests and the best interests of the UK.
I think more government, the more things don't get done. So if there's a place to put less government in, fine, as long as, you know, all sides agree. And that's the hard part, is getting both sides to agree. So
I think that's fine. I think that's probably quite a good idea, because when people voted Brexit, did they vote to say no to everything, or did they say vote? Someone's got to decide which ones we want, which ones we don't want. So Parliament's probably the best place, yes.
I think they're certainly in danger. The human rights should be something we all want to protect, and that goes above and beyond this Parliament, where if there's a certain majority, sometimes they can be infringed upon. So absolutely correct there.
It's possible, but we had human rights set out by law before the EU, so maybe not.
I don't know. I think that leaving the EU as a whole is not nice.
I think there's a danger of human rights being lost, and the biggest problem is they haven't guaranteed that they won't be lost. If you don't guarantee they won't be lost, then obviously there's a very good chance they will.
Well, I hope not. I hope people stand true to what they say they stand for, but it does make me worry that it's going to be easier and for things to change if we're outside of Europe.
There's a fundamental flaw in the way the government is approaching the EU negotiations, the Brexit negotiations at the moment, because basically they're saying we can pick and choose what we keep and what we don't. And unfortunately, many in the right wing of the Conservative Party are so hostile to anything European, they will try to get rid of many things which come out of Brussels. And that could indeed include the Charter of Fundamental Rights. There's been an insistence in the British House of Commons from the Conservative side that we want British rights, not European rights. And so, yes, there is a danger that perhaps some things will be swept away, though whether the EU will accept that is another matter.
As it stands at the moment, no one really knows which laws are going to be kept, amended or repealed. And of course, for many in Britain, the human rights laws are of immense importance, are paramount to them. But we don't know what are going to be kept, what is going to be repealed, what is going to be amended. There are many different dimensions to Brexit, and after March 2019, once Britain has left the European Union, that is when the dimension of European Union laws will really come into play. And of course, ministers are correct when they say that the UK Parliament will decide which laws are kept, amended, repealed, including human rights ones, because the UK Parliament once Britain is out of the EU, will be supreme.
Does the public feel that Theresa May has been clear about her Brexit strategy and its likely impact on the British public?
I think she's been very weak, and I think she's conceding far too much to the EU, and we should have taken a much harder line.
If we talk about this Brexit cake, I think we're talking more about a Brexit fudge and an awful lot of pork pies, quite honestly. Yeah, she has no idea, it would seem, actually, what she's trying to keep everybody happy. And it's a disaster, obviously.
One example is the photograph that's been doing the rounds of the social media of her actually campaigning for stronger in before the referendum. I think that just sort of shows you what her strategy actually, or her lack of strategy.
I don't know her plan, honestly. I just know that you guys want out, so whatever you guys decide to get out, you're going to get out. So you guys usually do what you say.
Perhaps she has. Perhaps she's playing it quite clever. Maybe she wanted soft all along and has managed to string them along, and now there's such a short period of time, they haven't got a lot of choice. So maybe, I don't know.
Theresa May being clear over Brexit couldn't be muddier if she tried.
No, but I think that's not just down to her.
Well, so far as I'm aware of, no. It's been very foggy.
Theresa May has not been clear about her Brexit strategy whatsoever. Even her very latest incarnation will not be accepted by the EU because they've got pillars that they can't go round. They were all formed by treaty. It's not something that they can go against without getting all 27 countries to agree to ratify the treaties, re-ratify the treaties, I beg your pardon. And all that leaves us with is a hard Brexit, i.e. leaving on WT rules, if we're allowed to go to WT rules, and there's no guarantee to say we will. So all we're left is hard Brexit. So the choice is hard Brexit or remain. There is not a soft option.
No, I think. Well, I don't think that. I think she's got an impossible job because there are nobody actually. All the people who encouraged us to vote for Brexit don't actually have an agreed plan on the way forward.
The Prime Minister set out her Brexit strategy basically to her fellow ministers at a meeting at Chequers, the country residence that the Prime Minister enjoys. And it's quite clear what's in the white paper now, which is being published. So we know what she wants. So she can claim that she has said clearly what she wants, which is basically to align Britain as closely as possible to EU rules and regulations, but to have the freedom to make independent trade deals and to pick and choose. But the difficulty is that the EU has already made clear that it's really not possible to have what we call a bespoke deal, a deal just for Britain that will give them special privileges. So it could be a very bumpy few months ahead as the negotiations progress.
2 years into Theresa May's premiership, it is abundantly clear that she does not have a strategy, let alone a clear strategy for Britain leaving the European Union. Indeed, her cabinet do not have a strategy, and the cabinet are not united. But let's be fair to Theresa May and the Conservative government. The Labour Party, the Labour opposition, the shadow cabinet does not have a clear strategy either. Recently, we had Keir Starmer say that a Labour government could support a second referendum on Britain's membership of the EU. Well, now that contradicts what Jeremy Corbyn has been saying for a long time now. Jeremy Corbyn has said there won't be a second referendum, but he wants to ensure that the Brexit deal is suitable for British industry, British business and foreign investment in Britain. So no one really has a clear strategy.
The population of the European Union is 508 million. 2 years ago, 43% of the UK's exports were sent to other nations in the EU. That amounts to around £240 billion. 54% of the UK's imports came from the EU, representing £320 billion. These figures show why freedom of movement and trade tariffs are so central to the Brexit debate.
We have seen a series of resignations by Conservative ministers since the European Union referendum. In the public's opinion, why is this?
She hasn't stood her ground, in my view. And I think Boris Johnson and the other ministers feel like her position is untenable.
He's, cowardice, basically. You just run away. It all gets too difficult and you run away. That's not a statesman-like way to behave. I think it's outrageous.
I think people like Boris Johnson were after whether they're positioning for a leadership challenge or whether, as some people say, it's because they don't think her version of Brexit is hard enough for them.
They're trying to get a consensus, and it's hard to do. And just within the same government, it's hard to get a consensus. So beyond that, I don't know the exact instances of who's leaving what and for what reason, but I know it's all over Brexit. So
we've got a hung parliament. If